and Coaches Awards. She's recently been nominated to the Richland County Player of the Year for girls basketball, and she plans to play basketball at the University of New Orleans, where she will major in exercise physiology and pursue a certification in physical therapy. Join me in welcoming one of our student athlete ambassadors, Imani Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Tammy. Ben is in his 14th year at Blythewood High School and 6th serving at the school's mental performance coach. His role involves teaching sports performance psychology and working with a variety of performance groups around the school, including most of the school's athletic teams. Ben also helps run the school's captain class and leadership academy student athlete leadership groups. He has worked with outside teams at the collegiate level and served as part of IMG Academy's summer mental conditioning staff. Next summer, Ben will be completing an internship with the Arizona Diamondbacks as a mental skills coach. Above all else, his why is to improve others to perform and enjoy. Without further ado, Ben Ehrlich.
Of course, I'm the first one to forget to unmute my mic right there. Imani, thank you very much for a great intro. And then thanks High School League for having me. And then most of all, thank you to our young leaders for being here. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk with you all this morning. And I say with you all, I think that's important. Like if we were meeting in person, it would be very much a different experience. But even though we're not meeting in person, I want to encourage you to share throughout the presentation in the chat box. Like I won't be able to see it, but the idea here is for y'all to learn with each other and for all of us to learn together. So I'll ask some different questions and like throughout the different leadership lessons that I'm hoping to share today, I really want to hear, and I would encourage you to share like ways that you're doing these things already, and maybe some ways that you can challenge yourself to do even better with them moving forward. I shared a document with y'all, a leadership scorecard, and the idea behind that is kind of the same, where like I'm hoping that you kind of consider where you're currently at as a leader and challenge yourself to grow as well. Just the fact that you're here this morning says a lot about your intentions to do that. And I hope that I'm able to share some things that are helpful to you. So the title, and I'm going to come back to the title here in a minute because it's really important and something that's very, very dear to me. But you can see it there. It's Kids Today, 10 Leadership Lessons from Young People Just Like You. Before we get going, I do think it's important to tell you a little bit more about what I do at Blythewood. Imani did, again, an excellent job introducing me. And like she said, I'm the school's mental performance coach, which is a very unique role. I'm the only one at a public high school that I'm aware of. And I'm really, really fortunate to get to do what I love to do on a daily basis, which is working with young people and helping them. So I teach a class called Sport and Performance Psychology for half of the day, which basically it helps people better understand themselves and better understand how their brain influences what we do. Like you all are performers, not just as athletes, but as students and as human beings. And really every single thing that you do as an athlete, student, human being, there's a brain connection to it. So basically I help people better understand that. And instead of like their brain working against them, kind of help them understand how their brain impacts what they do so that they can get their brain to work for them and hopefully perform and enjoy a little bit more. As you can see in the picture, I work with a lot of different groups. Almost every one of our sports teams does some sort of mental coaching. I also get to work with fine arts, with academic classes, and teach my class, which I really, really love. But the reason I'm with y'all today is we do a lot of leadership development at our school. And again, really, really fortunate to have coaches, then principal and vice principals, and then most importantly, students who really want to get better and want to learn as leaders. A lot of times, like y'all are thrust or put into these leadership roles because you're great kids. And being a great kid is a great, great start to being a good leader, but it's not enough to just automatically make you a good leader. we think that there are things that you can learn and things that you can do and experiences that you can have to actually help you become a better leader. And we try to support all of our student athletes and all of our students in doing that. So it started off as only about 10 student athletes in a group, and we've expanded it to where we have 4 different leadership groups and 80 different students get to do some leadership development. And it's a great, great thing. I enjoy it. And I learned so much from the student athletes, which is again, what I'm going to talk about in a second. Our captain class, though, they have really 2 big roles or 2 big responsibilities throughout the year. One of them is we do elementary school visits to local elementary schools. We go once a month and they work with different classes and just kind of give them the chance, and they have the opportunity to serve other people beyond just our school, which is something that I'm going to come back to in a couple minutes for sure, as far as like your leadership potential impact. But that's one of the things. We go once a month. It's a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. It's kind of hard to leave the elementary school because it's so positive. It's such a cool atmosphere to be in, but great stuff. Then the other one is we meet once a month and we talk about leadership. We meet once a month at lunch. Our athletic director gets pizza for everybody, and we kind of combine it. You can see on the left there's some activities that we do, but then a lot of it is discussion as well, and giving the student athletes the opportunity to talk with people from different teams. We have people from every team at our school in this group, so they get the chance to talk with other people who are going through the same things that they're going through as emerging leaders. And it's really, really cool to kind of see baseball players talking with soccer players, talking with basketball players, talking with swimmers, talking to cheerleaders, and learning with each other as far as like the great stuff that their teams are doing, and then bringing it back to other teams as well. So it's a lot of fun. And this is just, I would be remiss if I didn't like at least mention, these are the traits that we try to build in our student athletes. It's coming from a book actually called Captain Class, and I'll put a link to that at the end of the presentation. But it's just a really, really cool book. And you could see like, I'm not sure if you can see, but like that, on the traits, there's a lot of connection to sports psychology, which is near and dear to me. Okay, now, why is the presentation called what it is today? Kids Today, 10 leadership lessons from young people just like you. A couple reasons for this. The first one is that Kids Today beginning. It bothers me, like y'all probably heard this before. There are a lot of adults who complain about Kids Today. Kids Today, they're just always on their phones. Kids Today, they're entitled. They don't know what it means to work for something. There's just so much negativity. And I feel actually sorry for people who feel that way, because I feel the exact opposite. Getting to work with young people like y'all, I see potential and I see so much empathy, and I see people who are smarter than I ever was for sure when I was in high school, and who are greatly skilled and who want to help other people. And so like, I think it's really important that we kind of work to flip that narrative where Kids Today isn't a negative thing. Kids Today is an incredibly positive thing. And then I say like the 10 leadership lessons from young people just like you, those pictures on the slide, and you're going to see each one of them again. Like when we started this leadership development stuff, I thought that it would be about me sharing lessons with them. And certainly that's part of the experience, but I learned at least as much, if not more, getting to work with these incredible young people. And I think it's ultimately more powerful for y'all to at least somewhat hear from them than hear from old Coach Ehrlich. So these lessons are things that like either they showed or things that they said throughout their experience at Blythewood. And I'm hoping that like just seeing the pictures and then hearing their stories, you're able to connect with them, because my guess is you're at least like one of these 10, 11 people in the pictures here. And hopefully you'll be able to connect with their experience and take your leadership skills and leadership impact that you're already having and just take it to another level. So the first lesson in leadership that I've learned from student athletes in our captain class is leaders show up. And the pictures here, you can see they look a lot alike because they're twins. Josh and Jordan Burrell, 2 of my favorite people of all time. Both of them are freshmen in college now, and they played football and ran track in their time at Blythewood, and definitely two of the greatest leaders that we've had. And when I think of them showing up. They were both 3-time captain class members, so they were part of our group for 3 years. And we asked a lot of them, like they came to meetings, they went to elementary schools. You could see here, like they did other community service projects with us, and they always showed up. In 3 years combined, these are two different people. I think they missed one thing ever, which is less than 1%. And they had a great reason when they did miss it, but one thing ever. So they were always there. And I think that's incredibly understated. Like you might have heard before in sports, like the greatest ability is your availability. I think like the greatest ability within leadership is your dependability. People need to know that we can count on you, and your coaches, your teammates, your teachers need to know that we can count on you. And that starts with just being there. If you want to make a positive impact on other people, you got to be there. And these guys were every single time. And it's not just about physically being there, but they were mentally there too. Like it's about how you show up and looking to be there not just to be there, but be there with the intention of getting better and learning and growing and having an impact on others. And this is these two guys to a T. Like when they started captain class in 10th grade, they're big observers. And I think that's going to be a theme of all this a lot today, this morning too, is you don't have to be extroverted. Like you don't have to be super outgoing to be a leader. You have to want to make an impact on others. And these guys did. They didn't talk at all. I think their 10th grade year in captain class, and then by their 12th grade year, they were the ones leading a lot of our discussions. So two incredible leaders who showed up. And again, that's what leadership is about. Our second leadership lesson, and this one comes from Wyatt Britt, is like it's about your influence on others, not the box score. So often I see young people struggle with this concept that if they didn't play well during a game, that they somehow are inferior, or like that their role within the team is not important, or they failed as a leader just because they didn't score a certain number of points or goals, or get a certain number of hits or strikeouts or kills in volleyball, whatever it is. And I think if you kind of take that approach, you're selling yourself short big time as a leader and as an impact on your team. Wyatt Britt, again, is our example here. Wyatt, this picture is actually, she was in a fine arts 401 leadership group, which had like people from all of our different fine arts groups and then student government. But Wyatt started as a volleyball player at Blythewood. She played 2 years of varsity volleyball, 9th and 10th grade. And then she made the switch to tennis her junior year. And those of y'all who aren't familiar with volleyball and tennis, two incredibly different sports to be around. And that's something I've learned a lot in my role. My background is baseball, but I've learned about the cultures of so many different sports and teams. So Wyatt is extroverted. She's very energetic. She's very loud. She's very positive all of the time. And if you've been around volleyball a little bit, you know that's kind of how the way things are. Like after every single point, they're high-fiving, they're cheering, they're doing things. Tennis, a little bit different. Like in tennis, you even have to feel bad if you score a point sometimes. Like if the ball hits the top of the net and it just bounces, it kind of trickles over, you're supposed to apologize for scoring a point. So again, a very, very different sport. But Wyatt's junior year, she decided to do something different and switch to tennis. She was not the best player on the team. In fact, they had a really good team that year that went all the way to the upper state championship. And Wyatt didn't play in one match that meant anything. She played only in exhibition matches, but she had an incredible impact on their team by being that positive presence, by really kind of challenging the way that tennis is expected to be. And she was loud. She was cheering for her teammates during points or after points. She was herself. And I think like if she had only focused on her presence in the box score, she wouldn't have had any impact at all. And she would have been selling herself short. So again, we want to challenge you to realize it's not just about your statistics. It's about how you influence other people. And just to drive that home a little bit more, like every semester, our class does a project where they have to pick the characteristics that make a great teammate. And every single semester, it works out exactly the same. And there's a 1% there. And the reason for that is only 1% of the characteristics that they come up with have anything to do with athletic ability. 99% of being a good teammate is about everything other than your actual influence on the box score. And this is coming from your peers as well. So realize, even if you do feel like, and that's great that you feel a responsibility to them to perform, they're looking to you as a person so much more. And I don't think that's something that we can drive home enough. The third lesson, this is coming from another volleyball player, Macy Collins, is leaders sweep the sheds. And a little bit of background on where this is coming from is the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. They're the most successful athletic team in the history of athletics at the international level. They've won over 80% of their matches. They've been really, really good for a long time. And they have this concept of sweeping the sheds, which means like they take care of themselves. And they actually physically, like they take pride in cleaning up the locker room and carrying equipment. Something that I see a lot is like older athletes on their team, on teams, will make it the responsibility of younger athletes to carry equipment. And it's been cool to see a lot of teams have kind of switched that up at our school, and they've kind of taken to that sweep the sheds mentality, no more so than Macy. And like what stands out in my mind about her is, and it's kind of in some ways it's a sad story to think about, but it just speaks so much to who she is as a quality human being. Her last volleyball match, it's the first round of the playoffs this year. She's been a 4-year starter, all-state, just incredible leader, and they lose in the first round of the playoffs, and it was heartbreaking. And she's never going to play volleyball at Blythewood again, maybe ever in her life. And after the game, instead of just leaving, she's picking up chairs, she's picking up trash, she's putting the volleyball net up. And this is after her final game. She doesn't have to stay and do that, but she did it because that's who she is. She sweeps the sheds. And the more that y'all are able to sweep the sheds as athletes and members of your team, hopefully the more that your teammates will kind of grasp onto that concept as well. And so nobody's too good to carry equipment. Nobody's too good to do the little things that lead to success on your team. And if you can model that for your younger teammates, it can go a really, really long way. Lesson 4 is a huge one as well. Leaders build belief in other people. And this is Patty Orr. I love this picture because I'm not sure if y'all can tell, this is at soccer practice. So he's out there and basically he's leading practice. He's leading a section of practice. Something that I love about soccer in some ways is they give a lot of ownership to y'all, the student athletes, who it's kind of about. And so Patty was leading a session at practice. But where this leadership lesson comes from is I was fortunate enough, like some teams, I'll be around them at games and kind of just get to observe and talk a little bit here and there. But at halftime of soccer matches, soccer games, they'll talk about the first half, similar to football and basketball, if you play those sports. They'll talk about what's going on and what they need to do moving forward. Sometimes coaches will do a majority of the talking. I don't know if y'all's soccer teams are like this, but our soccer teams, they hear from the players too. And Patty was unbelievable at, regardless of the score, he would do it just a master class in how to communicate with teammates and his team with building belief in what they needed to do in the second half. Instead of focusing on the other team and all of the things that they weren't doing as a team, he chose to kind of not just say that he believed in them coming back if they needed to come back or finishing the game if they were ahead, but gave them 2 or 3 really simple steps that were going to help them do it. Let's make sure that we're first to the ball, make sure our passes are crisp, that we're giving great effort. So it gave them really positive and straightforward direction as far as how to make it happen. And that goes so far as a communicator and a leader on your teams. The more that you can help your teammates realize what they can do to lead to their great performances or better performances, the better your impact as a leader. And kind of a quote to go along with this is Jurgen Klopp. He is the manager of Liverpool, which is a professional soccer team in England. And I think this is important, and it's important from a sports psych perspective. He doesn't always believe, but he never gives up. And I think it's okay to have doubt. Like, you're a human being, you're going to have doubt, you're going to have some negative thoughts here and there. Deal with me with the announcements, but like, it's okay to have some doubt, but you can choose to act in a way that shows belief regardless of how you're actually feeling, which goes a long way with your teams as well. Lesson number 5 is leaders unapologetically raise the bar. Colleen Finney, she's a Clemson volleyball player now, and she's who I think of with this, like something that Colleen kind of struggled with early on in her volleyball career and her career as a young leader, which I think y'all might be able to maybe relate to as well, is she struggled with leading her friends. And sometimes it might be easier to lead other teammates on your team who you don't have a great relationship with or a big relationship with outside of the team. And she said like she was having a lot of trouble like actually kind of getting her friends to kind of raise their bar a little bit as far as what they were doing as teammates. And she said something that was really, really powerful though in one of our meetings. Yeah, I'm sorry, hopefully y'all can still hear me. If you can't, chime in and let me know, but we're gonna keep going with my focus. But she said, I can't see. Okay. Anyway, in one of our meetings, she was talking about like, she realized that it was less about like viewing, there's kind of a separation with teammate and friend. And she said that she found like instead of kind of looking at them always as her best friends when they were actually on the volleyball team, she looked at them more as a teammate, and she was able to address behaviors instead of the human being, which is really, really great advice for anybody. Like if you struggle with like, how do I address my teammates not living up to their end of the bargain? The more that you focus on the behaviors themselves, instead of saying like, you're being lazy or you're being selfish, you're being a bad teammate, focus on the actual behaviors. They're going to be a lot more open to your feedback as a leader. So again, she kind of raised the bar within her group and within her team. And I want to challenge y'all. We talk about like having a zap impact. You can do this within your groups. Just because your team has always had like a bar here for the level of expectations as far as what you do, or an expectation of success, doesn't mean it always has to be that way. Like if you want to raise the bar, do it. And you do it by connecting all of these different lessons, by showing up, by instilling belief in other people that they can live up to those expectations. It's really, really huge for y'all to model. Lesson 6, leaders make it easier to be part of the group. I know we have a mixture of grade levels here and probably ability levels too. But something that I think a lot of young athletes struggle with is realizing that they belong at the level that they're playing with. Like when they make the transition from like JV to varsity, it can be really, really challenging. And there's been times in the past, and I hope that your teams aren't like this, ours aren't overall, where seniors kind of made it hard on freshmen. There might even be like some giving them a hard time and like making them do lots of things that really make it harder for them to actually perform instead of easier, when the actual games themselves are already so incredibly hard. Like your job as a leader, as a teammate, is to let them know that they belong. And Trey was incredible at that. He's a player now at Iowa State. He's one of, if not the best player to ever play at Blythewood, which has a rich basketball tradition for sure. But he led in everything that he did. In his senior year, like the story that is etched in my mind for him is like they were playing a game. They were up by like 40 points late in the game. It was the night that he scored his 1,000th point, which is a huge deal for basketball players. And he could have easily, there were about 2 minutes left in the game when he's taken out. He could have easily just kind of checked out and not really paid attention, maybe play around on the bench with his friends. Instead, till the final buzzer, like he was coaching. He was supporting the freshmen who were playing and getting their chance, and the guys at the end of the bench who don't get to play a lot. He was supporting them until the very end, and that speaks wonders to who he is. And like something, I'll come back to something really cool with him at the very end, but that's who Trey was and who he is. And great leaders, they send the message to other people on their team that they belong there. Not just your friends, not just the people in your grade, but everybody on the team. You're all part of that team for a reason. This one's a recent one. Leaders love it. The picture is Kayla Childs, and actually one of her teammates brought her up in a meeting that we had recently where we were talking about the importance of playing with conviction, which was like playing with the belief in yourself that you're going to be successful, with looking like you know what you're doing and like you trust and that you believe that y'all are going to perform well. And one of her teammates brought her up as a cheerleader who shows that. I was like, how does she show it? And Camila, her teammate, was like, well, she just like, we have to cheer. You have to always look like you're having fun, and your facial expressions are actually part of the scoring. And she said, Kayla just always looks like she's enjoying it. And I asked Kayla, why is that? And she was like, I don't know. I love it. I really love it. And if you really love your sport, it makes it easier to lead in what you're doing. So I want to kind of challenge you here to connect with your why. Why did you start playing your sport to begin with? It probably wasn't originally about getting a scholarship or winning state championships or any of that. You probably started because it was fun and you like to be around your friends. The more that you're able to connect to that why and to connect to why you love it, the better your chance to have a great influence on other people. Number 8, leaders support others. I would guess y'all have probably talked before, this comes up constantly in our groups, is people were like, how can we improve the athletic department? Well, we want people to come to our games. We want more people to come to our games. We want a great environment. We want people to show up. We're good. We want people to come to see us. Zach Bales had the opposite approach, and we want to kind of encourage you. Like, I know it's important for others to support you, but we want to encourage you to support others and to be a giver. Zach didn't just expect people to come to his baseball games. He showed up for others. He went to basketball games. He went to football games. He led the student section. He went on our elementary school visits. Even within class, is somebody who is so welcoming and supportive to other people. Like, I can think of in our sports psych class, we have some people who are athletes and some people who've never played a sport in their life, and we'll do some physical things. And Zach was incredibly great at welcoming them to what we did. So I want to encourage you to be a giver, to support others without any expectation of them supporting you in return. Instead of always looking for what other people can do for us, go support others. That's what great leaders do. And that actually can increase your ability to be successful, not just as a leader, but as a performer too. Leaders aren't perfect. I know you feel like you need to be. You're not going to be. Erica Zippel, all-state soccer, all-state in tennis. Like, sometimes we think that leadership is this straight line, but leadership development is messy. It's going to have peaks and it's going to have valleys. You're not supposed to be perfect. She wasn't. I thought she was for a long time. Incredible student, all-state in both. And her senior year was the first time she was kind of faced with adversity. And some of her teammates kind of challenged her that she wasn't being a great teammate. And it was really hard for her to deal with. And it was kind of jarring for me, because you kind of put great people like y'all on this pedestal and you kind of think they are perfect sometimes. And we had to have like a really hard discussion within her team where she got some harsh feedback and she's not used to it. And I want to normalize that you are going to make mistakes, that you aren't going to be perfect. She was able to take that feedback and make herself a better teammate and a better leader because of it, instead of just brushing it off to the side. Getting rid of that idea that you're supposed to be perfect is huge for y'all, and something that I hope that you'll take. Finally, leaders are themselves. This is Savannah Simpson, one of the best leaders that we've ever had. And she was unapologetically herself. I wish I had a video clip of it. She played softball, and her walk-up intro, like the song that they played when she'd go to hit, was Soldier Boy. And she would actually do this as she was about to hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the other team doesn't hate her. But it's just who she was, incredibly unapologetically herself. But when I say that, it wasn't an excuse to not do things. She really believed in who she was, but was willing to grow as well. So often we can get caught up in rankings and star ratings. And want to encourage you, like this is my favorite quote right here, because it's true. You're number one in the world at being yourself. And the question isn't like whether you're number one or not, but it's what that number one rating is going to mean. What are you going to make it mean? It's kind of balancing the idea of being appreciative and knowing all the great stuff that you already have that's true about you, but balancing that and blending that with realizing that we can always learn and improve. Finally, want to leave you with this. This is the concept Farka Papa. So I know it looks a little bit different, but it comes from the Pacific Islands, and it's the idea that we're all connected. And you're connected to past players on your team, you're connected to current players on your team, and you're connected to players in the future. We all get kind of our time in the sun, and then it's going to be over. And the question is, are the players not just now, but in the future, are they going to speak positively about you? One of the coolest things, I'm going to go back to Trey real quick, is we've done something with the basketball team this year where they have told stories about like what it means to them to play Blythewood basketball and like something that happened to them that shows that. And every single senior on our team, who they were freshmen when Trey was a senior, has mentioned Trey. And his impact is still very much real at Blythewood, and it's going to last so much longer. So my challenge to y'all is to take that meaning and take that power to heart and leave your schools better because you were there, and really, really take that time in the sun and really, really roll with it. Finally, thank y'all. Being a leader is hard. It's a challenge. It's not for everybody. Just the fact that you're here this morning means that you want to do it, which is really a leadership lesson in its own. You got to want to be a leader. So thank you for having the courage to do it, because not everybody does. If you want to reach out to me, here's some contact information. I know I'm a couple minutes over, Tammy, I'm sorry, but would love, thank you all very, very much. And hopefully you're able to take this and kind of appreciate who you already are as a leader, but challenge yourself to grow too.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah,
and I'm sure I'll remind everyone that's on that the information, this presentation will still be available on NFHS network, as well as our website, as well as our High School League YouTube channel. So anything that you may have missed or still, need to hear again, it'll be there out in the open for everyone in the archive. So have no fear. Ben, let me tell you, you come across as, I'm sure you are, you're so soft-spoken, you're so polite, you're so sweet. I never, getting to leadership tip number 10, if I could see you do Soldier Boy a couple of times.
Yeah, believe it or not, yeah, there might be, speaking to, if you look up Blythewood pep rallies, there may or may not be a clip of me doing the Soldier Boy at a pep rally. Yeah.
I never would have expected that as we went along. I was like, oh, and then to see you do that, I think that was very, very funny, but very informative. I do have some questions for you. I know we're a little bit over, but I still want to get these questions in that were sent in. One being, what's the best way for a student to step into a leadership role if they struggle being a leader?
Yeah, I think like the first thing that I would say is kudos to you for wanting to do it again. Like, I think just the idea of wanting to be a leader, I think that's the most important step in becoming a leader, is wanting to do it. I think the second thing is what I would say is to ask your coach. Like, ask your coach what they're looking for from you and a leader. Let them know that you'd like to be it, and they'll give you hopefully some steps and behaviors to focus on a daily basis. Also talk to older teammates. I think they've been through the same experience as you. So use your resources, and I think really just celebrate small wins along the way. One of the hardest things of being a leader is it's not like a box score where you don't get a certain leadership score at the end of the game, but the more that you're able to kind of reflect and think about like how your behaviors lined up with what is expected of you as a leader, and celebrate those small successes, that's going to give you some steps towards building some confidence and celebrating small wins to help you evolve as a leader. But it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's not supposed to be really easy. So you're not alone in that experience too.
Okay, got another question. If a school is interested in creating their own captain class, their own version of it, how do they get started, or is there a blueprint, or how would they go about doing that?
Sure, another great question. I think first off, I want to throw this out, reach out to me. Like, I'm happy to help and have a further discussion about it. I've included my email. I'm happy to talk with people who would like to do it. But if they want just the short version, is I would say start small, try to get representatives from each team. Like, we get nominees from coaches and like had initial conversations with the coaches. Hey, we know it's hard to develop leaders and we want to help you all out. And I think the more that you're looking to serve the coaches, like the coaches are going to be on board for it for sure. And then you build in with what the buy-in with student athletes. Start small, do something is better than nothing. Those conversations and allowing them a space to be there, I think is kind of the blueprint. Okay, and one final question. In lesson 4, you mentioned topic that's close to my heart, communication. You mentioned communication. I believe it was with Patty maybe, but how can students improve their methods of communication? And you also mentioned there was a time when one of the athletes was, I don't want to say confronted, but the team had to speak with a particular athlete and it wasn't so positive, it wasn't what she was used to. So what methods can teammates do to improve their communication to where it doesn't come across so harsh? Yeah, that's a great question. I think like something that we work with teams a lot with is like the effectiveness of your communication is going to be based on how much your teammates trust you. And that trust, they have to believe that you care about them more than just their performance. So like if they only hear from you when you are getting on them, like, oh, that was a terrible pass, or gosh, you got to make that play. If they only hear that from you, that can be really draining for them. So my first advice would be to go out of your way to build relationships with them and to talk with them beyond just on the field. This is what we need from you. If they know they care about them as a person, they're going to be better able to take the actual feedback. The actual feedback itself, the more that you can be positive and focus on the actual process. It's not just like empty positivity, but focus on the things that they're doing well and be direct as far as the things that adjustments that you can make. That's going to make it a constructive criticism instead of something that's tearing them down. So that's a couple of things. There's so much more being a purposeful communicator, but it's really, really important. So great question. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for the entire presentation and all of the information. I'm sure you're going to have not only students reach out to you, but probably some of the adults that are on with us, because the captain class is definitely an effort and an initiative that I think would be beneficial to all of our schools. So thank you for sharing everything that you've experienced and created there at Blythewood and beyond. Well, thank you again for having me, and the thanks really goes to the student athletes. Those lessons are really coming from them, and they're just like y'all. So don't be afraid to lead. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, up next, we have our second presenter, but before we move on to them, I would like to introduce you to our second student ambassador. We have Ms. Ayanna Hopkins from C.A. Johnson High School. She is a junior honor roll student with a GPA of 3.1. She's also a singer, an athlete, and a social butterfly. She's a triple threat is what I've called her. She is a participant on the varsity volleyball, basketball, and softball. She's also a part of the ROTC program and the YPD Church and Zeta Phi Beta and the FBLA. She says that when she plans to graduate, she's going to attend a 4-year college and serve in the Air Force Military Reserves. And she shared a quote with me, and I'll share it with you. It's her favorite quote. Those who died yesterday had plans for this morning, and those who died this morning had plans for tonight.
Don't take life for granted. In the blink of an eye, everything can change. So forgive often and love with all your heart. You may never know when you may not have the chance again. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ayanna Hopkins.
Hello, I have something to do with introducing Coach Andy Hallett. Coach Andy Hallett was born and raised in upstate New York. He is the youngest of 3 children. He graduated from Northville Academy and Central Schools, where he was a 3-sport letterman. After arriving to South Carolina in 1994, he attended the University of South Carolina, graduating with his master's degree in physical education. Coach Hallett is the head baseball coach at AC Florida. He has been there since 1998. The Hall of Fame coach has won 7 state titles and 2 runner-up finishes. Coach Hallett is entering his 23rd season as the head coach of AC Florida High School. He has been a motivational and informational speaker for the South Carolina High School League for 10 years, developing leadership and sportsmanship skills. With further ado, Coach Andy Hallett.
Thank you very much. Very well put. I appreciate it. And Tammy, it says that I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it.
Just one moment, Coach. We'll get that remedied.
Okay. All right. And that should put me up. Is that correct?
You are on.
I am
see
on.
you. Yes, we see you just fine and hear you.
Great. First, I'd like to thank the High School League for having me back. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here. I would much rather be in person. I think the message comes across a little bit better when we can interact with each other. So with that being said, all I'm going to ask you to do is pay very close attention as I move forward through the presentation. And just like with your last presentation, there will be an opportunity at the end for us to interact. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump right in. The presentation is normally a little bit longer than the 30 minutes that are allotted. So I want to try to sneak a lot of things in here as we move forward. I'm supposed to talk to you today about sportsmanship. It's something that we all know what it is. We talk about it in closed groups, but yet we never talk about it in discussion in large groups or until we see the actual unsportsmanlike act being brought to our attention. So really simple, just like everything in life. If we're going to talk about sportsmanship, the first thing we have to do is know what it means. Well, for us old school people, you can go to a dictionary. In today's world, you just Google and you'll come up with some definitions. The biggest thing that I want you to take away from sportsmanship is, quote, it is the conformance to the rules, spirit, ethics, and etiquette of sport. So then you look at that and you go, that's great. But if I don't understand what ethics are or etiquette, then that definition isn't going to do anything for me. So we'll thin it down a little bit. It's when teammates and opponents and coaches and officials treat each other in the same manner. It extends to not just being on the field, but in the locker room, in the hallway, on the bus. And also it goes to, quote unquote, how we play the game. That's probably one of the biggest things that we all take away from sportsmanship because we see it when the games are actually being played. So in today's world, we live in a society where winning is everything. All the time during the high school years, as seasons wind down, you see 1 to 1,000 people put hashtag ring chasing. That's what we're trying to accomplish, is to win a state championship. And I agree. Everyone that plays a team sport, there is an ultimate goal at the end, and that is to be the best at what you do. As an individual sport, it's a lot more based on your own ability to be self-motivated. But in team actions, the ultimate goal is to be able to raise the trophy at the end of the year. The problem is that during this ring chasing ceremony that we all seem to think is entitled to us, we see many unsportsmanlike acts that happen. And unfortunately, some of them have brought national attention. And you can go to YouTube and you can go to social media and you can find them every single day. I don't think it's time for me to bring them up in my presentation, but you know what I'm talking about. Fans coming out onto the field, players getting in fights. it's just one of those things that just astonishes me of the actions that are being taken place on sporting event fields and in the bleachers over what we would classify as a kid's game. Now, the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, we're obviously not talking about a kid's game anymore because they're being paid millions and millions of dollars. So I would not classify them into the same conversation as I would youth football, youth basketball, high school sports, and unfortunately now college players are getting paid as well. But sportsmanship comes in all kinds of phases. The biggest question is winning really everything? Is it the most important thing that we're trying to accomplish? Are we entitled to winning just because we put time and effort in? Unfortunately, a lot of us believe that I'm supposed to win just because I showed up or because I worked this and I did that, but we're not entitled to winning, right? Rights are given and rights are earned, right? But one of the things that I try to make sure my players understand, right, is that rights are not given, right? Everything that you get in my program is earned, from the weight room to your GPA to your playing time. I tell all of my players that the first thing you have to understand is you are responsible for your academic career as well as your athletic life. I, as the coach, am here to be in your support group. I cannot be the one that leads you 24/7, 365. Why? Because all players have to be able to have something inside of them to get through situations that put them in a circumstance where an unsportsmanlike act could happen. At what lengths will coaches and players go to win a game? Well, we've all seen it. The question is, do we actually teach unsportsmanlike actions to our players? Do we practice being unsportsmanlike? Well, the question is, what is unsportsmanlike? And it comes down to whoever's in charge of your program will decide exactly what those things are. I know in years past that I've seen some coaches that I participate against, and their teams do things that I know they had to practice. And unfortunately, it is definitely against the etiquette of sport. There is no ethics involved. They're teaching their kids to cheat. They're teaching their kids that it's more important to win than it is to play the game the right way. So as teachers and coaches and parents, is winning the only evaluator to success? Well, most of us would say, yeah, it is, coach. Well, I tell everybody this. I can win a game and I can lose a game. But as long as we play the game and we just get beat, we can go back to practice tomorrow and continue to work hard. As an athlete and as a coach, when you lose a game, that means that you failed to do something that you were prepared to do. You didn't execute your offense well enough. You made too many errors on defense. You walked too many batters. You didn't make enough free throws, fill in the blank. So losing a game is more of what I would call self-inflicted versus me just getting beat. And when we do lose the game, that is usually when the unsportsmanlike actions happen to start to show up, especially in football or a game where you are in close proximity, basketball, lacrosse, soccer. It's very easy to have unsportsmanlike actions take place in those games because we are in each other's personal space for 48 minutes. It's unfortunate, but as my career has moved on, it seems to me that I see more and more unsportsmanlike acts on the football field. And it comes from, I want to call it showboating, but it comes from people thinking that tackling somebody is some great feat, when actually that's just supposed to be part of the game. And we try to embarrass our opponent instead of just treating them with respect and playing hard. So sportsmanship isn't displayed not only when the game is over, and it's not a sometimes thing. Because for me, sportsmanship really is about character and composure. We had this long discussion yesterday about the Baseball Hall of Fame, steroid era players. Well, I told my coaching staff that the Baseball Hall of Fame is not the Baseball Hall of Character. Am I right? Am I wrong? I'm not sure. But what I do know is that in high school sports and in amateur sports, character and composure are going to take you a long way. If you've heard the phrase, play the game the right way, then hopefully you'll know what that means. To us at AC Flora Baseball, it means from the time we get on the bus, we travel as a team, we look the same. When we get off the bus, our entire team's going to look exactly the same. We're going to have a pair of shorts on, we're going to have a jersey, we're going to have a jacket, we're going to have a hoodie, but our team is going to be the same. There isn't going to be a player with their headphones in. There isn't going to be a player with beats on. There isn't going to be a player with slides on. From the first player that gets off the bus to the last player that gets off the bus, we're going to look like a team. Why is this important? Because I think it says something about your character. I know, and will probably hurt some of y'all's feelings, when the player continues to wear their headphones in the dugout, on the field, does things by themselves, they're telling me that they're selfish and that this is about them instead of us. Well, when you play AC Flora baseball, it's going to be about us. It's just who I am. My kids understand it, and that's what we do. So you have to ask yourself this: how do you travel? But when we get on the bus, we can have a pair of sweatpants on, shorts, we have a pillow, we have our earbuds in, we have beats on, fill in the blank. I want my kids to be very comfortable. I want them to relax. Heck, I want them to take a nap if they want to. But when we get off the bus, that's when our first image is going to be shown to our opponent. And not only to our opponent, but more importantly to me, to a school official and administrator from that school is going to take a look at my team, and they're going to make a judgment or an impersonation of who we are just by the way we get off the bus. So we're trying to make an impression that says we're professional, we have high character, and we're here to represent AC Flora High School, our team, our staff, and our family. How do you warm up? Well, for us, our team has a very specific way that we warm up. It's just the way we do things. And then most importantly, how do you play the game? And some of you were saying, oh, I've seen some of your teams, coach. I've seen some of your players do things that you're talking about. And you're right. I'm not telling you my players are angels. I'm telling you that there's a consequence for their actions. And it might not be at that given second, but there is a consequence for their actions. And they know it. And that's why the norm is that my teams aren't going to perform unsportsmanlike acts. But what my teams are also not going to do is get bullied out on the field when we play the game. So with that being said, what are we entitled to? For me as a coach, we're not entitled to anything. And that's where our character questions must be answered. A lot of us in today's world think that we're entitled to things just because of the name on the front of our jersey or the name on the back of our jersey. Well, the true character questions come, and then none of them are really about winning or losing. They're about what you reflect and what your teammates reflect, as well as your coaches. In my world, we have this expression called class and dignity, or thugs and bums. Right? And we just kind of make an impression based on what we see from our opponents. And then sometimes we ask ourselves, man, these guys act like entitled brats. And it's okay that we have an impression, because what we're trying to do is get a read off of who we're playing against. I've had people tell me that my players are cocky and arrogant, and I'm the same way. And I say, well, I understand that that's your opinion, but you don't understand what we're trying to accomplish as a team. I consider ourselves to be extremely confident and aggressive in how we play the game. We practice hard, we play hard. The expectation is very high inside of our program. Character is a tremendous evaluator for us on playing time and who wears our uniform. We have policies and procedures just like everyone else. But inside my program, we don't have rules. We have one rule. It's called do the right thing. But we do have certain laws that we must abide by. I tell my players all the time, I have the right to get in my truck and drive down Forest Drive at 100 miles an hour every day. I just have to be willing to accept the consequence that comes from those actions when the Forest Acres Police Department decides to pull me over, put handcuffs on me, take me to jail because I was driving 100 miles an hour down the road when the speed limit was 35. So there's a consequence to that action. Just like there's a consequence to the action that you have as a player when you decide to create an unsportsmanlike environment. I'm fortunate that one of my friends does work at the high school league. It's one of my very good friends. And we have had some discussions about things that happen on the athletic fields. And one of the things he stated to me was every single coach always seems to start out a suspension with, well, that's not who he really is. Well, we have an expression around here called, you can't hide what's in your heart. Eventually, your true character will shine through. So when they have a video of a football player slinging a helmet, or they have a video of a baseball player running over the catcher, and the coach says, well, that's not who he really is. Well, the video would show you a direct conflict of that is exactly who he is. The situation just had to present itself for his true character to shine through. So your character is being revealed every single time you step on the field. If you're a star player or you're in a high profile program, you're eventually going to run across what we call your own personal hater. That means they're the ones that are in the stands that just love to yell at the star player. They love to yell at a coach. And as soon as you look at them, they now have pushed your button and they're going to own you the rest of the day. If a fan becomes your personal hater, how do you as a teenager avoid that conflict? Well, I tell my players, don't give them the satisfaction of even looking at them. Because eventually, if you don't look at them, they will stop. I've had plenty of personal haters through my coach's career that stand right behind me in the third base coaching box and say some things to me that would make your skin crawl. But I don't acknowledge their presence. I don't even turn around and look at them. And eventually they realize that it's not going to work and they'll move on. But if you're playing the game and there's an opponent that is in your ear 24/7, and they will not stop hating on you, trying to bully you, so to speak, you have two choices on how you're going to react to them. And it's a true character revealer. That's what it is. Is it hard? Absolutely. I'm not telling you that this is the easiest thing to do, is to not acknowledge your own personal hater or someone is trying to get under your skin. But if you have a belief system, things that you've been taught in your life by your mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, guardian, coach, teacher, friend, you have something to fall back on that says, I need to stay out of this situation. A, it's not going to help me win the game. And B, it's definitely not going to help my team. I've made this statement to my coaches and I continue to make it. I've coached baseball at AC floor for 23 and a half years, if you count COVID. And in 23 and a half years, I've never been thrown out or ejected from a high school baseball game. I've argued, but I've never been ejected. And I'd like to think it's because I understand that there's a limit to how far I can push things. Because I know as a head coach, it's not going to do my team any good if I'm sitting on the bus. And I know it's not going to do them any good the next game when I'm not even there. So you have to ask yourself this, is the selfish act that I'm about to perform really worth it for me not to finish the contest that I'm in right now and then not even be able to play with my friends and my teammates next weekend or the next game? So sportsmanship is really about character. And then inside the game are when your character gets revealed. I believe if you're going to be a championship caliber athlete, you have to play with a confidence and an aggression that no other people understand. Anyone can play the game, but if you want to compete at a high level, if you want to find yourself playing in college or at the next level, as they say, there has to be something inside of you that says, not on my watch. I'm going to be the one that's going to stand up for my teammates. I'm going to be the one that's going to be in charge. I'm the one that's going to make sure that this doesn't happen. And all it is, it's a presence that you have that your teammates understand. Because if you're the star player, you understand they're always looking at you. Your opponents are looking at you. Your teammates are looking at you. The fans are looking at you. They're waiting for that crack in the armor so that they can bring you down. Why? Because that's the society that we live in today. It's easier to try to take somebody down than it is to realize you just don't work as hard as they do. So once again, you become a personal hater. How do you show frustration? Do you have actions or words, or are you strong enough to keep it within until you're in a situation where it's not going to hurt your team or yourself? In baseball, it's awesome. We have a dugout. It's one of the best parts about our game is we have an opportunity to kind of express ourselves inside that dugout without bringing any embarrassment to myself or to my team. When an unsportsmanlike act does happen to you, and we've all been there, it goes back to what I said earlier. Do you acknowledge these negative actions or words with a reaction? Or are you strong enough to just walk away? Because if you give them the satisfaction that they're getting to you, you know it's just going to continue to get worse. What are we talking about? We're talking about composure. You have to be able to keep frustration inside and not let it affect how you play or act. Once again, is it easy? No, it is not easy. But what I'm telling you is if you want to be a true champion on and off the field, you have to carry yourself that way 24/7. Because people are always watching you. I tell my kids that all the time. There's some 7 or 8-year-old little boy sitting in the bleachers right now watching you play that wants to be you someday. Just like we want to be able to be Chipper Jones or to be LeBron James or Michael Jordan, fill in the blank. We have heroes and say, I want to be like them. Well, the problem is that you don't know who those people are. You want the lifestyle that they live. You want the paycheck that they make. You don't understand that how things are always working for them. But for us, as amateur athletes and amateur coaches, composure comes back and is the root of our character. If we're able to keep ourselves composed during the high-level stress situations of an athletic event, the mountain can turn into a molehill. That's what separates winners from losing, is what happens to your composure when anxiety sets in or when adversity shows up. Do you throw your hands up? Do you lash out? Do you create a foul? Or are you able to, quote unquote, breathe it out and continue to be in charge? Character is a reflection of who your person is on the inside and the out. So as a person on the inside, you can be burning up like a volcano. But on the outside, your opponent, the fans, coaches, college recruiters, see someone that continues to stay cool, calm, and collected. Because what we always have to remember is college coaches are in the winning game business. If a college coach doesn't win enough, they get fired. So they're looking for players that can handle adversity and handle things that happen to them when things are bad. It's easy to be in the great mood and to be happy-go-lucky when things are going your way. The biggest question is, how do you act when things aren't going your way? And it's tough. So it comes down to this. Sportsmanship is not only what the fans see and hear, but what your opponents see and hear. Ask yourself this: did I really have to say that? Was that truly needed? Did I really just do that? And would I want someone to do that to me? I think that's the biggest character reveal of all time. It's in the good book, Do Unto Others. Well, if I'm one of those players on the field that likes to talk trash, but I can't take it when someone talks trash back to me, you got low character. And I might hurt some of y'all's feelings, and you might say some bad things about me right now because you know I'm talking about you, because you're the person that likes to talk trash on the field, on the court, in the game. Well, I promise you, trash talking doesn't make you a better player. And what it does is it reveals what your character really is. I'm not talking about competitive conversation. Like, you can't guard me. Like, you can't make that. We've all been there. We've all said that. Or we've thought that. But it doesn't bring my opponent down. It's just a competitive verbiage that says, I'm here to play, are you? Versus trash talking where I'm trying to make my opponent feel bad. I'm trying to get under their skin. I'm trying to ruffle their feathers. All these and many more are just personal questions that we call character revealers. As your time winds down as an athlete, ask yourself this: how do I want to be remembered? I talk to my players all the time and ask them, upon your graduation date from AC Flora High School, how do you want to be remembered? Well, obviously, the ultimate goal is to be remembered as a state champion. And as in the introduction, I've been very fortunate in my career to have raised that trophy 7 times in the last 20 years. It's a tremendous feeling. It's a tremendous accomplishment. It's something I'm very proud of. And for those kids that walked out the door, the last official thing that they ever did was have a ribbon put around their neck and be called a champion. Well, if your championship ends, seasons don't make it, your team doesn't get to the pinnacle, how do you as an athlete want to be remembered? I've coached for over 20 years, and in my time, I've made this statement a lot. That kid is a tremendous talent. Too bad he's a piece of work. And most of the time, that player doesn't make it at the next level. Because if you're a college level player, realize that every other player on that roster in college was an all-state player too. They hit third too. They were the starting point guard too. So now you're not competing against lesser talented players. You're competing against someone that might even be more talented, even older than you, physically stronger, mentally tougher. And you have to be able to understand that when an unsportsmanlike action happens, you have to be strong enough to be able to get through it. You'll be remembered as a champion. You'll be remembered as a good person. You'll be remembered as a great player. But I promise you, as a coach, I've had plenty of great players, but I've had more great people that have graduated from my program that make me proud to this day. So as your time starts to come to an end, you could be a sophomore or junior and you got plenty of time, you think. I promise you, your time will go faster than you can blink an eye. And the next thing you know, you're a senior and it's spring and it's May and you're like, what happened to my 4 years? Don't leave a black mark on your character because you failed to control a situation or to control your own emotions. It's hard. It's tough. But no one ever said that life was easy. If you choose to be an athlete, that means that you have made a conscious decision to go out and compete at a high level. So therefore, you have to be willing to take the good with the bad. And then when the bad does happen, it's going to reveal your character. And in the end, I want you to look in your heart and ask yourself this one simple question: did I play the game the right way? If you can do that and you can come up with the answer, you found out what your own personal character is. And it's not too late to change some of your flaws. All it is a conscious decision that comes from within your body and your soul that says, I need to be better. Because in the end, sportsmanship is nothing more than a reflection of your true character. And in closing, I'm going to tell you this. As a teacher and a coach, I have plenty of people that come back to school that want to visit me. Well, no matter how great a player you were, if you were not a good person, I will not give you the time of day. I'll shake your hand and tell you it was great to see you and say, look, I have a class to teach and I'll move on. But if you were a great person who has high character and stood for something, I'll take the time out of my schedule to make sure I sit down with you every day, spend some time with you, talk to you, ask you how you're doing. Because in the end, your character tells us everything we need to know about you. Hopefully I've been able to give you some information that you can take with you. Tammy, I see that there is some stuff in the chat.
Yes.
So I'm just going to kind of click on it and I will start with the one at the top because I've given myself a couple minutes, and it says, how do you deal with a teammate with a bad attitude? That is a wonderful question. I can tell you this, as a coach, the bad attitude is easily adjusted through playing time, the bench, and suspensions. As a teammate, what I would strongly recommend if you have a teammate that has quote unquote a bad attitude, that the first thing you do is talk to them one-on-one. Do not bring them out in a big situation in front of your team, because they're going to get defensive and it's going to get ugly. So if you can find time to get with them one-on-one away from the team and just tell them what it is you're feeling, you might be able to get some dialogue with them and create a situation where they might not have been aware that this was going on or that it was as bad as you see it is. And it might be better off if you do it in that situation as an individual or maybe just one other person with you. But you don't want to put that situation or that player in a situation where they feel like they're being attacked or ganged upon. So my first recommendation is see how the coach handles it. The second recommendation is put the situation in a very personable environment, one-on-one or two-on-one with that player. Second question, how do you as an athlete get your coach to chill? I would do the same exact thing if I was a player and I felt like my coach was going over the line in a separate situation, one-on-one, without being intrusive. I would talk to them exactly about what their actions are that are putting you in a bad situation. Once again, do it in a very common, polite, social area where the coach doesn't feel like they're being attacked. And bring out the points that you're trying to get your coach to understand, as their behavior isn't helping you as a player or your team. Coaches are very competitive. So you have to be very careful on how you approach your coach if you think that they're overboard when it comes to dealing with officials or how they're yelling at their own team. But I know as a coach, for me personally, I always tell my players that my door is open 24/7. If you're willing to come and talk to me, I'm willing to listen. Because the first thing that you've told your coach, if you go and talk to them, is that you're willing to stand up for yourself and talk about what things that they might need to do to help your team become more successful. And once again, it's not easy, but it can be accomplished. Question 3, how do you deal with repeatedly bad calls? Well, in a baseball world, I know that bad calls are going to happen because there's a lot of things that are subjective in our game. So I will let them continue to play themselves out and hope that the umpire or official just happened to miss that one. But if it gets to the point where my team is being negatively punished by an official because the calls continue to go against my way, then I will get involved and I will go out on the field and I will stand up for my players. And it will start out the first time in a normal conversation, just like I'm talking to you right now. And I'll tell them straight up, I haven't been out here all day. I know sometimes we have a bad day, but we've got to be better in a game like this. We've got to let the situation play out. We can't just keep guessing. Just take a deep breath. It's all right. But we got to be better. And if the calls continue, then I have to ask myself, how much can I continue this before I'm going to put my team in a negative situation? And sometimes I can't do anything about it because I know there's going to get a point in time where they're going to send me packing. So I think it's a situation of let's see how bad it gets, and then let's see if my team can overcome it without me getting involved. All right. Next question. How do you as an athlete get your own teammates to calm down if they start yelling at officials or opposing coaches? Okay, that's a great question. And the first thing I'm going to do is probably hurt some coaches' feelings and say that should never happen if the coach is in charge of his team. We actually talk about it before the season starts. I tell my team, your job is to play the game. My job is to coach the game. Your job is to play the game. My job is to deal with officials. Your job is to play the game. My job is to deal with spectators. Your job is to play the game. My job is And they understand they have one job. And it's not to officiate. They don't talk to officials. They don't yell at officials, because if they do, they're not going to play for me very long. So if you have a teammate that's yelling at officials and opposing coaches, I would tell you that your head coach needs to take more charge of his team or her team and put some laws in place that say, if this continues to happen, then you're not going to represent our program anymore. I know that's harsh, but if you impose the will, players will follow. If that doesn't happen from your coach, then I would strongly recommend to you as a player to tell your friend or your teammate, once again, in a non-threatening situation, say, you're not helping us here. You're getting off your game. You're getting the other team riled up. You're creating more adversity for the officials because they're not sure how to deal with you. You're not helping us win the game today. I need you to stay within your own skin and realize there's only so many things you can control, and that's play the game hard. You can't control the officials. You can't control the opposing coaches. Do your job. Next question. With a player with a bad attitude, I'd pull them aside and try to get them to cool down. Try to figure out what the problem is and provide a remedy. Absolutely. All right, let's see if we got anything else in here. Whoop. I think that's what I got in the chat, Tammy.
Okay, I was
So
gonna
if
say,
there's
you
anything else
made
maybe that
my
you might
job.
have for me, or something that I'm not seeing.
No, you made my job a lot easier, because I was writing those questions down, and it seems like our viewers and our student athletes are really paying attention, because every one of those questions were spot on of what I was thinking, but they covered everything, everything from the student athletes' behavior to the coaches' responsibilities, as well as fans' responsibilities. So thank you so much. I will say that, Andy, I think you may be frozen. Can you hear me? Oh, well, I think he is frozen at the moment, but I just wanted to go ahead and add that I wanted to congratulate Coach Hallett that last year he reached his 500th win as a baseball
Had some technical
coach.
difficulty going on, Tammy.
Okay, can you
I
hear
lost
me?
you for a minute and I just came back.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, and I look forward to seeing you face to face. We've had you before as a presenter, and it's very empowering. So thank you for all the information and covering the bases. Ha ha ha, pun there. But we look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely.
And also congratulations
Absolutely.
on your 500th
And thanks for having
win.
me.
All right. Coming
Thank
up
you.
next,
It
I'm looking
was a nice
forward
honor.
to. Coming up next, we have our student ambassador, our last student ambassador, and her name is Emily Rucknow. She is a junior from Hilton Head Island High School. She's played #1 on the tennis team since she was in the 7th grade. She's been named to All-State Honors for 4 years, and also was named the South Carolina Player of the Year during her freshman year. This was the same year she led her team to a state championship. She's a member of the National Honor Society and the Spike Ball Club, and she also enjoys playing basketball. She's still weighing her options on which college and what major, but she's proud to say that she has been in touch and communicating with West Point and Naval Academy coaches. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Emily Rucknow.
Thank you, Ms. Tammy. After 22 years of education in South Carolina, the athletic director from T.L. Hanna High School has helped players and coaches overcome many obstacles. Thomas Bell graduated Hillcrest High School and later went on to wrestle at the Citadel. In 2019, the South Carolina Athletic Administrators Association recognized Thomas Bell's outstanding ability to help student athletes not only on the mat, field, court, or course, but also in the classroom. Thomas Bell wants his students to accomplish great things not only during high school, but the years following. During his 13 years as an athletic director, he has helped other coaches recognize that every student athlete is different. He has helped them acknowledge that communication is critical, as well as respect, positivity, and patience. It is such an honor for all of us to get to hear from such a kind-hearted, compassionate man. So let us all give our attention to Thomas Bell, who will be discussing smart choices.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Emily, for that introduction. That was really, really nice. I certainly appreciate that. I'm going to screen share now while I kind of get going. Students, if you, during my part of the presentation, we kind of talk about our smart choices, kind of piggybacking off of the sportsmanship that Coach Hallett presented to you guys just a little bit ago. There's going to be several times during my presentation where I have some videos and I'm going to ask you to respond in the chat or kind of to piggyback off some of the thoughts and the things that I've done. The smart choices aspect of our presentation is again, how you interact amongst your own team, how you interact with others. And then I'm really going to ask for you guys to help me as an administrator with an area that I struggle with our sportsmanship and our smart choices. And that's really in the managing of our student sections and how far is too far when we get involved with our athletes attending sporting events. So if you hadn't been participating, please make sure you got your hands ready to go and you're ready to type some responses. And Ms. Newman, I'll go to her a couple of times during our presentation. So Coach Hallett mentioned earlier, obviously, what is sportsmanship, and we wanted to just kind of go through that definition. And he mentioned something very similar to this about the fair and the generous treatment of others, especially in sports contests. So I have a couple of videos that I'll share with you guys, just kind of going through sportsmanship. Some of the videos are a little tough to see, or their footage, but if you listen to the announcers, I think you'll get a good idea of kind of what's going on. Just want to display a couple of the sportsmanship things we're talking about with our students today. So here's a failed 2-point conversion attempt, and somebody felt so compelled just to post this of what happened next. You know, I hear all the time, I hear people always kind of want to bash our teenagers and stuff, but I get to see examples of true sportsmanship and just positive behavior like that from our athletes all the time in our schools. You know, as we try to instill in everyone kind of the behaviors that we think are important. Keith, I'm having just a little bit of trouble here. I don't know why it's not letting me. Oh, there we go. Never mind, I've got it now. So the next kind of idea is just another great example of sportsmanship. This is from the Ohio State Championships a couple of years ago. All right, so again, just another great video. I remember when this, kind of made the rounds and blew up on social media, 7 or 8 years ago is when the video was, but it was, just an opportunity for an athlete to just do something kind for someone else. And that's what we're talking about, those choices. You guys, you'll have opportunities to make choices each and every day as you're doing competition. And you know, Coach Hallett mentioned it earlier about the sports aspect gives you an opportunity for your true character to be revealed. And sometimes we obviously, you know, don't always have the best of intentions with our sportsmanship sometimes when we see acts from athletes. You know, here's a pop-up in a softball game. You know, and here's an example of an athlete who, you know, they popped up and I'm sure they're frustrated, and you can tell she kind of intentionally veers over to make contact. Now, she's called out on the play, but it's just one of those things, and I think Coach Hallett talked about it a lot, with making sure that we understand the difference between sportsmanship versus gamesmanship. And I think that's really at the heart of where these choices. Now, gamesmanship is defined as the art of winning games by various ploys that help you obtain, you know, a psychological advantage. And look, I've been a coach for a long time, and I know that there are certain things that we do in athletics that, you know, that are accepted. I mean, if you've watched the World Cup and how our players react to soccer fouls, I don't necessarily think that's unsportsmanlike. It's part of the culture. It's, you know, in free throw shooting, if you're in a basketball game, those of you that are basketball players out here, you know that, you know, when a guy's got a big shot, sometimes you try to do that last minute switch on the boxes just to make him have a little bit extra time to think about that shot. You know, we've seen it in college football, and it's almost become an epidemic with, you know, football players needing to fake injuries to stop up a hurry up offense. So we've got opportunities where I think coaches have to address with their athletes. And athletes, I'd encourage y'all, and that's really what we're going to talk about for these smart choices is, you know, set a standard that you want your program to be recognized by. Are you willing to let the sportsmanship rise to the level that actually possibly puts you in a situation where it costs you a little bit in the game? And I think that's ultimately the major crux that we as coaches and administrators deal with teaching you guys. And sometimes we need help and we need growth in that area. I know that when I was a 25-year-old coach, I reacted much differently to these types of situations of gamesmanship versus how I reacted, you know, now as a 43-year-old with children and just a little bit more perspective on life. So a couple of examples here that I wanted to give. This is where I think sportsmanship went to another level because these people actually chose sportsmanship over their ability to win the contest or do better. In every one of these situations, the athletes actually put themselves in position to not be as successful. Here is a professional tennis match is the first example. If you just listen to the announcers, they'll explain the scenario really well. So it's called out by the official. So the one guy hit it, the official called it out, and the opponent just told him, he said, that was in, you should challenge it. All right, that's just a great example there of a situation where I think we as coaches sometimes, you know, we struggle in that aspect. If I were that guy's coach when I was a lot younger, I would have said, well, why did you do that? It's not your responsibility to make the calls. You know, hey, a bad call that goes your way is just a part of the game. Those are kind of some of the rationales and things that I think sometimes we struggle with when we're trying to make better choices. Here's one that many of you have probably seen. I know it's a few years old, but this is probably one of the best examples. These girls actually ended up getting highlighted by ESPN and were a part of the ESPY Awards. If you haven't seen it, I'll just kind of set the scene real quick. This is this girl. You can see her name on there, Tchaikovsky's. She hits her very first home run ever playing softball. She's playing in a college softball game, and as she rounds first base, she tears her ACL and can't continue to run. So The rules of softball are pretty much the umpires are standing there and the umpires say, well, if anybody helps her, then she gets credited for a single, and everybody goes back to the base where they were. If anybody from her teammates or any of her coaches, so if you can imagine at this softball game, everybody's kind of standing around discussing what to do, and they don't really have a plan for a scenario like this. And then, obviously we get great acts of sportsmanship. So here's her home run. So you can see everybody start looking, trying to figure out what's going on. And then it'll cut to what most people remember from this story is the two players on the other team get together and ask the umpire, because the umpires explain that they're not really allowed to help in this situation. So the two players for the other team ask the umpire, they say, well, if the teammates can't pick her up and move her, what if we do it? And again, I mean, this is a competitive college softball game. And the other two players are basically, they have an out here. They can take 3 runs off the board for the other team, or they can give the other team 3 runs and give this girl credit for her first ever career home run. It just so happens she's a senior. This is her very last at bat that she ever plays competitively of college softball. And, just a great example and a great moment of sportsmanship where two people decided that what they were going to do was going to be something more, that actually in this situation put themselves in a position to lose the game more so than win it. And again, I think it's a tough one for the athletes, because where does that line of sportsmanship versus gamesmanship go? So as we're going to talk here a little bit, I'm going to give you guys a lot of examples here of the 3 aspects. What do we do as far as a team? What do we do as far as how we treat each other? And then the final one is simply, how do we behave as fans and sportsmanship? If you guys want to take screenshots of this, as I put some ideas up here, what I'd like for you to do is simply take some of these things back. How can you change your team? I'm going to implore you guys today. Coach Cave at Well Branch and I, we went to a great seminar at the National Conference in Denver. And at the end of the seminar, they gave all this great information. I didn't feel like they gave us a lot of good ideas to take home. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my ideas and my thoughts here about how you change your team. And what I'd like for you to do is while Coach Newman's manning the chat, as I go through your team, if somebody's got a great example of something that your coach is doing with your team specifically to promote sportsmanship, to really teach you guys how to be better sportsmen in the game, I want you to throw that in the chat right now. I'm going to give you the 4 things that I've done as an athlete to try to help out our athletes with understanding everything that's going on. And when I get to the end of these 4, Ms. Newman can chime in with maybe some examples you guys have, but please just throw them in the chat while I'm talking. So the first aspect is, how do you change your team? All right. With our team, we are just going to simply take on the mindset that we're not going to be a selfish team. Everything that we do, we are going to call one another out for any type of selfish act or selfish behavior. And as a coach, I think it's really simple. If I set the standard in my program that we are going to do more for others on our team, I think there's a direct carryover to the programs that we compete against and the way that we are viewed by the other teams. So we're not going to do things like the freshmen are the ones who carry the bags. We're not going to have that type of stuff. We are going to serve others on the team first and foremost. All right. I see that chat number down there. It hasn't changed yet, so nobody's put a response yet. So either your coaches out there are not very good at teaching sportsmanship, or you're all typing really great long answers here. As a coach, the second thing I did is that, just simply all officials talk to others about how amazing and respectful you're going to be. All right, so I make it a challenge to our team that we are going to accept all the calls. We're going to accept them. I was at Fort Mill High School a long time ago, and their coaches were great. I thought it was a message they sent to their pitchers. When a pitcher, a close call didn't go their way, they just immediately yelled out there, "Hey, good pitch, and it's a good call." And it was just reinforcing to them that that not everything's going to go your way. Not every break's going to go your way. The umpire, didn't make a good call in that situation, but it was a good call because it was what the umpire made, and the next one's going to go in your favor. It was just a mindset that they took on. So we've tried to adopt that. When I was a wrestling coach, if a call went against our kids, our saying that we used was fix your face. I know some teams have used that with baseball, softball, basketball, when they're getting frustrated and you're trying to promote that sportsmanship and promote that positive mindset. It's simply that we're going to kind of fix our face and move on. So we're going to treat those officials with the ultimate amount of respect and all of their calls, because those sometimes lead to our most likely unsportsmanlike conduct behaviors. Number 3 is we are going to praise one another for hustle. And there's a lot of coaches out there that preach this mindset that we're going to control the controllables. So when you're making smart decisions, you want to make decisions based off of things you control. The official's call is not one that you control. The attitude of the other team is not one you control. But how you treat one another in your dugout or on your bench, and also how you play the game is something that you control first and foremost. So we're going to praise hustle. We're going to praise the way that we compete. And we're going to do those kind of things and not focus on the results as much as it is the process for us to be successful. I've heard a lot of great coaches who they will preach that over and over again, that we are going to be focused on the process of our team being successful. All right. And then the last thing with your team, Coach Hallett kind of mentioned this just a little bit, but difficult conversations and criticism, we are going to do those things constructively, and we are going to do those things privately. If you can take the emotions as much as possible, I think the emotions are what lead us to a lot of those unsportsmanlike behaviors. So we're not going to put someone in a position, whether it's a teammate or whether it's a coach reacting to you, we're not going to put someone in that kind of position where we put them in a position to have an emotional response. Typically, our unsportsmanlike behavior gets to us when our emotions get out of control. So our dugout is not going to be a super high emotional combative place. Now, there may be emotions and frustrations, but that's something personal that I feel you can check. There's not going to be the back and forth and things like that lead us to sometimes having that negative attitude that surrounds our team, so to speak. All right. Those are all the 4 things that I like to do as far as involving our teams and how we promote making those smart decisions. Ms. Newman, if there's anything great, you can throw it in now, or if not, we'll wait till the end.
Yes, we do have some. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, we've had some feedback, and I'm going to run through these really quick, and some may be in the form of a question or, just some of the feedback, but we've had someone says, always thank the officials and fans, because a lot of teams will leave the field or the court, with their head down, or, run straight to the locker room. So they suggest, wave at the fans after a game, if possible, if your coach allows. Also, in the heightened sense of, COVID, air high fives instead of handshakes. Handshakes used to be the one thing that was a must after games, but now, that's kind of went by the wayside due to COVID. So I think, there are a lot of different ways of showing the appreciation to another team or an opponent. One of our students says, my coach encourages us to accept every call the ref makes. If we control the controllables first, we will win a game. We will win the game. So that kind of copies what you were saying about, following along with the calls. Also, I think this is from a coach. I will teach my teams the rules by example. If you leave the bench, it's unsportsmanlike. So that's one thing that you've got to stress about that.
Good. And
also an idea, or I guess someone may be doing this, or it's an idea, but host a fan workshop prior to each season on sportsmanship. Talk about the behaviors toward officials, players, coaches, and I'll add personally on social media. I think that, social media just is a big part of sportsmanship or lack thereof. And our final comment we have, let's see, the other team doesn't know that you are going to grab a teammate. I'm not sure about I'm not sure what that means, but that was something that was sent in. So
Okay.
those are some great ideas.
Thank you guys out there, because again, I'm going to steal some of those. I like the idea of making sure, you know, that I didn't even mention it, but one of the things that I used to do with my my team was immediately after a game or a wrestling match, we would go into our cleanup mode, and that was also the time for our athletes to thank the fans who attended, to go over and say hello to grandma who came, or boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever it was. You know, make sure that you reach out to them and kind of talk to them. And then we were going to have a team meeting about 15 minutes after the match ended. A lot of times I'd put time on the clock, and they knew that when that horn sounded. I think that was a great example that somebody gave. And then whoever gave the idea about the workshop for your own team. Look, athletes, I'm trying to give this presentation, and we're talking about sportsmanship, but really what I want this to be is action. I hope that next week when you guys start trying out for your spring sports, or whether it comes up next year, you take on that leadership role where you start to establish some of these policies within your own program to promote better sportsmanship within your own program. And I think you're gonna find a lot of differences. If your coach doesn't necessarily teach it, that's okay. You can take on that leadership role in some of these changes in your program. I think it helped. That idea about having a workshop for the parents before the season, and like Ms. Newman said, with social media, those are all amazing ideas. And I encourage y'all to be more proactive in your own team and try to set a standard. All right, the second phase is how do we treat the other teams? Now, this was where it gets a little bit more difficult, because I know that I felt like when I was an athlete, it was a perception of weakness if I was kind to others. I wanted to be the one who had the serious look on my face. As I transitioned into a coach, as a young coach, I wanted my athletes to behave in almost the same manner. You know, if you don't have that look on your face, you're not focused. Then I, again, continued to grow and continued to develop as a coach, and started to understand that the way we treat others is really, really important. You know, everybody out here, Emily's the one who introduced me. I can't imagine a sport that's more difficult to show compassion to your opponent. Emily plays a sport where the majority of the time, the opponent calls in or out against her, and she does the same thing. And I'm sure she's been in tough matches where she's felt like somebody is cheating her. And it is an overwhelming feeling for her to be able to continue to make that positive choice in how she interacts and treats the other person. She certainly has to stand up for herself, but it puts in a tough spot in some of our sports, like I said, like a tennis or things like that. All right, we're talking about the other team. One of the first things we talked about with my group is we're not going to be afraid to compliment the other team for great plays or great effort during the contest. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Somebody who hustles and dives on the floor for basketball, you know, a lot of times his teammate's going to run over there and they're going to pick him up. A lot of coaches teach that. You better get over there and be the first one to meet your guy who got on the floor for you. What's okay for us to also give him a pat on the back too, and say something to him in a positive manner. Somebody makes a diving play at shortstop. It's okay to just yell out there, hey, great play there, number 6. It's a mindset that you try to establish within your own program as to how you're going to treat the others. Again, I was a wrestling coach. There's a lot of downtime at wrestling competitions. I wasn't afraid for my kids to be socially interactive and positive with athletes on other teams. I didn't think that it weakened them. Now, as a young coach, I did, but as I developed and got older, I understood that there was a little bit bigger picture in mind there in the relationships and the development and just, you know, the growth of everyone's own mental health. We need to have a good time when we're at these wrestling tournaments for 9 hours in a day. Yeah, we need to be social. We can't be over in the corner just looking mad, ready for the next match for 9 consecutive hours. Number 2, I thought of this one later on, and I wish I could go back when I first was a coach. I was a softball coach for a couple of years at Fort Mill High School, and I got better at this as I went on. But I think that it's something for you to lead when you folks have a system in place where you're going to initiate the greeting when the team comes onto your campus. Are you going to rotate it around where everybody has a different week where they are the greeter of the other team? You're going to get them to their locker room. You're going to show them where the restrooms are. You're going to talk about where concessions are. You're going to tell them where, you know, at Hillcrest High School, we had a great softball program. We only had mounds on one side of the field, and they were going to make sure that the visiting team knew that you know, no, your pitcher and catcher, feel free to go over and use our mound area for your warm up for the pregame. I always thought that was really good with making everyone feel welcome when they came to our field and our complex. We wanted to put out that positive atmosphere. Now, once the game started, we were going to try to run rule you. We were going to try to be dominant. I don't think behaviors like this take away from our ability to want to win, but I think it does set a standard for how your program is seen by others. All right. And then finally, we're going to use social media to look for opportunities to do kind gestures. We see a lot of stuff out there, and it became just normal practice for us. If we found out something difficult with another program, we were going to try to reach out. If it was a death of another wrestler at another school, we were going to get the information, and we were going to probably send flowers to that school on behalf of our wrestling program. I've done it as an athletic director on behalf of our athletic department. We've shown up at wrestling matches before, knowing that another coach just recently had a child in the first couple of years, and we showed up with a bag of diapers. And I made our kids I gave them the opportunity to go present that to the coach before the match started. And I feel like things like that are just opportunities for you to put your program in the limelight involving the other team. I really hope that you'll get with your head coach, especially if you're a spring sport, and talk about ways in which you can do that to make a better choice about how you're going to display sportsmanship. The way we treat others is the way that we hope to be treated. And I think that's something out there. Now, I'm going to keep going on because of time, but if you've got some things that you do with your program or you have done as an individual athlete that really show your sportsmanship and appreciation for your competitors, please throw that in the chat right now, and we'll touch on it at the end. But I'm always looking for other ideas in which I can encourage our teams to do more for others as we try to make those good choices. All right, the reason I'm moving fast is because my last section is the one that I want to get to the most. And I need y'all's help as athletes out there. So be ready to punch on the keyboard real quick. All you're going to have to do is punch a Y or a no, a yes or a no as to do you agree with this crosses the line or not. So student sections are something I struggle with. If you guys are out there, you know what I'm talking about at the big football game, at the big basketball game. It could be different sports, playoff baseball games, playoff softball games where the students want to back their trucks up to the fence and have a student section. I struggle with, as an administrator, how to teach sportsmanship as it applies to our student athletes, because all of you seem to know how to behave when you are involved in the contest. My experience as an administrator has been, it's like you throw those rules out the door when you become a fan at a sporting event. Now, my YouTube video didn't work for this one, but this was just a school where they felt compelled as an administration to ban students from attending games for a couple of weeks. I found another example of a school in Georgia where they rewrote their athletic handbook mid-year to put in student conduct as fans because things had kind of gotten out of hand. So what am I talking about with things getting out of hand? All right, here's where I need y'all to be quick in the chat. All right, I'm going to put up some things that are examples of student behavior. I need you to tell me, the question I'm asking you is, does this cross the line? All right, does this cross the line? So if you think what I put up on the screen crosses the line, you hit Y and you hit the enter button real quick, and Miss Newman will just kind of help me go through these, but y'all be really quick on the keyboard and give me your answers. Does this cross the line? All right. Number one, yelling air ball at basketball games. Does that one cross the line? Yes or no? All right. To me, I think that one's pretty universal, pretty simple. What are the responses there? They say, no, it doesn't cross the line. And I tend to agree with you. That's how I was. I grew up in an era where Duke basketball was the coolest thing in the 1990s, and everybody wanted to be the Cameron Crazies. This one's pretty simple, but can it go too far? And if you've been in student sections, you know where we're headed. All right, number two there, students turning their back when the opposing team's introduced. Again, another example from basketball. That was something we used to do. I know y'all don't know, they used to have these things called newspapers. We would hold them up and fan them just like the Cameron Crazies did. Does turning your back when the other team's being introduced, does that cross the line, yes or no? All right. What do we think, Miss Newman?
I'm getting a lot of ends. I'm getting a lot of no's right now. So far, that's all I've gotten from both of your examples, or
I
nothing
think
but
those
no.
two are pretty simple. All right, let's push the envelope a little more. All right, you guys that are in the student section, when a call goes against you, everybody likes to do the push it cheer because it sounds very familiar with another phrase, and it's a hard one that I have to deal with as administrator because our students want to look at me and go, but it doesn't really mean anything, but we all know you're trying to say it in a way that connotes to the official that we disagree with your call. Does the push it cheer cross the line for a student section?
They're saying no. I'm getting
All
a
right.
lot of ends.
All right, good. All right. Number 4, when you chant the name of a player's boyfriend or girlfriend while they are batting. You know, I dealt with this last year in the playoffs. We were in a playoff run, and students from another school, they were really active. They were really engaged. They would get on social media. If you post stuff on your social media, should it be fair game for people to call you out on while you're at the free throw line? Is it okay for them to just say, you know, Samantha's going to be really mad at you if you miss this free throw? Am I getting a lot of yeses that crosses the line, or is that a no, it doesn't cross the
I'm
line?
getting all yeses. I'm getting all yeses.
All right, so there we have our first yes, where y'all kind of agree with me. When we go into your world, when we go into your space, when we go outside of the context of the sport, that's where y'all start to have a little bit of a problem with it. I had to address this in playoff baseball last year. I've had to address it in playoff softball. With social media out there, our kids are really good and they're really smart, and they find information and they try to do it. They take it a step further. Our next one, we had students one time who blew up a picture of the opposing team's quarterback, a picture he had taken on the beach. It was kind of a silly picture, and they blew that up, and we're getting ready to play football, and they have huge pictures of this guy with an embarrassing photo of him, and it's on his social media, but they're trying to use that and be funny. It's a yes or no. Does this cross the line when we start making pictures of other people and stuff?
They're saying yes. They're
All right,
saying
okay.
yes.
All right, I had it one time, you know, and my next one, just kind of picking off this one, and it goes there. Our student section one time printed off photos of the opposing player and his girlfriend and blew those up into poster size and came to the game with them and wanted to display. Which again, I hope we can all kind of agree this is maybe where we're getting to that point where we're crossing the line. But again, I'll ask you, is this a yes? Does that one cross the line as well?
They're saying yes. We're getting all yeses on these personal invasions of not privacy. You know, if it's on social media, it's not private, but it's still not connected to the sporting event. So we do have, well, this question is going yes, no, no. So we're getting both on this last one.
Okay. All right. Let's go into then me and I'd love to get a lot of interaction from you guys, because I have this conversation with my student leaders as we try to talk about acceptable behavior, because I want my students to come and be fans. I don't want them to cross over into being that fanatic. And look, y'all, if you could go back in time a long time ago, I promise you, Tommy Bell, as an 18-year-old, would have been in the front row doing the push it cheer. I would have been the one who would have been getting pictures off social media. So I get it. I get why it's out there. You feel as if it's an opportunity to distract the other team, and you get into this mindset, this almost tribal cult mindset. We get into these student sections where we feel like we can impact the game in a positive way. But as an administrator, we've seen examples on the news where we have to start to set a better standard. And I'd like for you guys, as you go back to your schools, to think about sportsmanship in your student sections a little bit more. So here's a few of my examples. Number one, cheers should never be directed at individuals. You simply don't make it personal. When I'm going to sit down with my student leadership group, and we have that here at T.L. Hanna, we also had some leaders at Hillcrest High School, whether it's a formal or informal establishment, there are people out there that are leading the charge. They're the ones deciding what the theme of dress up is for this week's football game. I need to sit down with those people and we need to set a standard that we're not going to make it personal. I hate it, but the air ball chant is beginning to cross the line over to make it personal. All right. And one of the examples in the video was simply trying to understand how to do cheers and how to keep it fun for the students. But fun doesn't have to be mean. Fun doesn't have to be singling out. Number two there, we want to have that fun atmosphere. I want my students to spend money coming to my games, but you guys have got to work at it. You've got to work. You've got to meet. You've got to talk to the band. You've got to talk to the cheerleaders. You've got to try to create ways in which you can get your interactions a little more uniform, like what you see at some of the college football games that you're trying to mimic. I know this year when I got to TL Hannah, one of the first things I did was for next year, I've given the band one or two little short songs and chants and things that I want them to learn before next year's football season, things that I've stolen from LSU football and Georgia football and Clemson, the third down song that Clemson plays. If we can create some of these type of things that have chants and cheers and are cognizant in what we are trying to accomplish, which is supporting our team and helping our team against our opponent, then put some effort into it. You guys create a leadership group, put some effort into your student section, all right? Number three, obviously, again, officials have got to be respected. The clip that I had, one of the things, the school, they, instead of the cheer with the push it, they yelled Helen Keller, which most of you know. They would chant Helen Keller was one of the things their administration had tried to stop, because they felt like the officials, when they made a bad call, that was their nice, cute way of trying to point out to the official that we disagree with your call. Again, does that start to cross a line? The officials have got to be respected. The most likely circumstance for your school to get into a situation of negative connotation is when the atmosphere becomes so toxic that we start to make bad decisions. The officials have got to be respected. And so when I talk to our student section, it's about my leadership setting an example. I don't know if booing has to go away, but it's certainly not going to be the first thing on our mind. We're not here to point out the injustices of an official, because ultimately I believe and respect that those officials are trying to do a great job and they're working really hard. They're a part of the contest. They are not the contest. And so we're not going to make them the focal point, no matter how frustrated we may get sometimes. Again, I'm just about ready to finish up here, but if you've got things that your school or your student section are doing, please put those in the chat so that we can address them here shortly. Last little thing here is just, again, if you guys have got what I was just kind of saying with my disclaimer, I'm looking for ideas for something I can do as an administrator to take back to my students. I want a great environment. I want people who want to come, and I also get it. We start the baseball season in February and it's really cold, and there's a dedicated group of 10 or 15 students that are at the game, and they get it, and I can talk to them and they understand what the expectation is. Well, then we get in the playoffs, and last year at Hillcrest High School, we actually were fortunate enough to go all the way to the state championship game. And I mean, we're in a spot where we're selling almost 1,000 tickets for a playoff baseball game against Somerville. And we have students coming to the game who've never been there. They just know it's the event in Simpsonville in the Fountain Inn area for that night, and they want to be a part of it. But some of them sometimes don't want to behave, or they want to cross that line because it's their first time coming and they don't know the standard that we've set for how we're going to behave. What's fair, what's not fair. And it's a tough situation that I deal with as administrators. If you guys have great ideas of things you do as student sections or ways in which you have it organized, I'd love for you to drop it in the chat, because I'm still learning as an administrator. I'm gonna take some of these ideas and I'm gonna try to apply them to just making us better here at TL Hannah High School for the next year. I've got on here my email. If I've gone too fast, I know we're a little bit over on time, and we'll do the question and answer, but I've also put my Twitter and my Instagram. If you want to reach out through one of those measures, you can reach me those ways, or by sending the old-fashioned email. If you've got something you don't have time to explain or put in the chat, but you'd like to discuss, I am all ears. And I think some of you student leaders out there, you can help me continue to grow as an administrator who's trying to teach sportsmanship, and trying to teach our students how to make smart choices in their team, how they interact with other teams, and how we are as fans. Those are the things I want to do. I hope you've got something you can take from here, and I hope you guys will start to have some meaningful conversations with your administration and also with your teammates as to how you want to behave and your school to be represented this upcoming spring season and then on into the fall and winter. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Newman for the Q&A and anything else you guys have.
Thank you so much, Tommy Bell. That was a lot of information, a lot of helpful information, and you really got our students and our participants thinking. I do have some questions for you. There's one that's in the chat right now. She says, I play girls varsity golf, but I'm also the mascot for my high school. How can I try to help calm football players down on the sidelines when they do not agree with calls that are being made?
Yeah, you know, I think you've got to be able to stay in your lane. And I think that's a conversation. If you're a student leader at your school, which obviously you're someone who's involved, you're playing sports and you're also going out and doing something extra. I think it's a situation where if you have a student leadership group at your school, I think that's a conversation, and that's something that needs to filter down from the athletic department to the coaching staffs to the players. You know, it's emotional. Football is one of the most emotional games, but it's something they've got to try to do. I ultimately know that most coaches will agree with me. If your players get overly emotional about the officials, it will affect their play. And that is just in almost every single sport. You know, Mallory, you as a golfer, if you get emotional on the golf course, it affects you on the next hole, whether it's what somebody did to you or said to you, or whether it's just how your day is going. We tend to we want to be emotional when we play sports, but we have to be able to control emotion. And I think that's a great thing, Mallory. If you guys have a student leadership group, I think that's where you start in trying to filter down that through your athletic department.
Okay, another question. You mentioned that officials have to be respected. What do you have any idea, or what is acceptable? What's an acceptable behavior towards an unhappy call? Or if there's a call made and all of the rhetoric and things that go on with officials like the Helen Keller and that sort of thing. Is there anything that is acceptable to express yourself, or should you just stay quiet?
I think Coach Hallett touched on it earlier about that. It's the job of the coach ultimately to be your mediator between your play and the official. And obviously coaches do it on different levels. I simply try to always go back to that sports are preparing us ultimately for real life. And the way that you emotionally behave is typically, standard as to the emotions and the feelings that you're having, the true character that you have. When you vehemently disagree, you can be unhappy, but there's a difference between going, oh, come on, versus throwing a glove or something like that in a baseball game, which is obviously going to get you ejected right away. So you've got to be able to control those emotions. Again, I think it's a conversation that has to happen from the top down and be filtered in. It's got to be a part of our everyday rhetoric. I do know this. I used to get on my athletes, my wrestlers, and this would happen, in the sport of wrestling. If you say a swear word on the mat, the official has the ability to eject you right then and there. And if he doesn't eject you because he doesn't think you directed it at him, he can still hit you with penalty points for that. And it was just part of our practice. I knew that if an athlete was likely to curse in practice, it was likely to happen in a real match. And so we tried to address those issues right then in practice. There was going to be a consequence for that because the way that we practiced was ultimately the way we were going to play. I don't know if that exactly answered the question, but that was just kind of how I kind of look at it. How we need to handle the officials is if we practice the right way and keep our emotions controlled in practice, and then let our coach be the advocator. I think that's always the best step.
Okay, and one last question. What is there a way? I know it's in some schools or in some sports rather, there's a fine line between the actual game and the event versus everything else that's occurring, whether it be, tailgating or with high school student sections. when students, what do you do when the student section and the antics become the attraction? That they kind of overshadow the actual event.
So I touched on that earlier and just a little bit, but I'll expand on it. I know that our students ultimately, they want to come and have a big student section because, you know, all of us, whether whether we're successful in sports or not, it's the same thing. The first basketball game, the first football game, everybody's interested, everybody's excited, and they want to be a part of it. And they just want to, you know, ultimately we want to feel a connection to our classmates. We want to have a good time. And when I've had instances that I've had to discipline as an administrator, I've simply asked the question of, well, do you and your friends go out on the weekend to the movie theater and behave this way? Well, obviously the answer is typically no. So then why bring that here? And I go back to our student leaders creating an atmosphere that we can all agree on doesn't cross the line. And again, I go back to do some research, student leaders out there, do some research, student section leaders. Look at what Clemson student section does that are joined together, that are collaborated, that are taught, and behaviors that they can give you that feeling that you're looking for in a student section. Ultimately, we want it to be fun. We want it to be a good experience on a Friday night. So if you'll go back and kind of continue to just work at what your student section is going to do and how you're going to behave, you know, I think that's ultimately going to keep you out of trouble. And administrators that are out there, I think it's a conversation we've got to be willing to happen. When you are just addressing it on Friday night when things have gone bad, then you can't really fault the students if you didn't give them a standard from the beginning.
Thank you so much, Coach Bell. And again, a plethora of information, not only from this final presentation, but the other two as well. And if someone was unable to watch this live, it will be on our website as well as our YouTube channel. But before we close, I just wanted to make mention a grand thank you to the Carolina Panthers for sponsoring this event. And a reminder, all of our schools, we've put on social media as well as our website. But this weekend, we have new partners in Dick's Sporting Goods. They are now a high school league partner. So this weekend, to celebrate that, we're going to have from January 28th through the 31st, 20% off for our students, staff, everyone. So go to our website, SCHSL.org for that coupon. It's out there. Use it this weekend for any of your sporting needs. And if you enjoyed today's summit, you will be blown away by the NFHS in-person Students Leadership Summit this summer. If you're interested in that event, please contact our office, specifically Danny Brooks, Associate Commissioner here. He will give you all the information, you know, coaches, any of our administrators. If you know of a student that would represent South Carolina to the best of their ability, we want to speak with you. But there will be a live student summit this summer. Out of state, it's the National Federation's event, but we do send representatives, so be sure to contact Danny Brooks. And just a reminder to recognize any of your female pioneers. Yes, this year is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. We will be honoring South Carolina pioneers of that, so please reach out to me at tnewman@schsl.org with any pioneer female Title IX leaders from the past, and even some unique current females that are benefiting from that. But outside of that, we want to thank you for joining us today. And again, our presenters, our student ambassadors, thank you all. This will be on our website and our YouTube channel. So please share it and join us next time, because there will be another one coming up this spring. Thank you.